to our course on modern web development. In this lesson, we'll improve your AI assistant application by adding the ability to handle multiple conversations with persistent message history. We'll achieve this by integrating a database using Prisma and SQLite, implementing modern best practices, and refactoring our API routes for better organization and scalability, so they can interact with our databases and save the conversation history. By the end of this lesson, you will have a fully functional AI assistant that allows users to start new conversations, continue previous conversations, view conversation history, and enjoy a seamless and interactive chat experience with real-time streaming responses. So we're gonna start off with the setting up Prisma and SQLite. And before we begin, once again, all the code that I use in VS Code is actually provided in the lesson, so you can just like while watching the video get the code and follow along. So yeah. Okay, now we're gonna continue with introduction to Prisma and SQLite. So what is Prisma? Prisma is basically a next generation ORM, which stands for Object Relational Mapping, tool that makes working with databases very easy and intuitive. It provides a type-safe database client for TypeScript and Node.js, ensuring that you can catch errors at compile time. And why are we mixing it up with SQLite? Well, because SQLite is a lightweight, file-based relational database. It's easy to set up relatively and doesn't require running a separate database server, making it ideal for development and small projects. And if you want to find another substitute, we could use other SQL databases, but we're just gonna stick to SQLite because we're not doing a very large project. So yeah, now we're gonna install our Prisma and SQLite. So what we have to do is copy the commands from our lesson. So the first one is npm install Prisma save dev, and the second one is npm install Prisma client. So the first one is basically saves the Prisma in the dependency file, and the second one is installs the client. So we're gonna run them, and I already have them installed, so it's not gonna take that long. And we just have to wait a second. Yeah. Prisma is the Prisma CLI for managing your database schema, and Prisma client is the auto-generated client library to interact with your database. That's the better description for that. And now we're gonna initialize our Prisma. So run the following command to initialize Prisma in your project. So basically type npx Prisma init, which stands for initialization, and just simply run it. So as you can see, we have some files that are appeared in our project, and this command creates a Prisma directory with a schema.prisma file inside, and .environment file for your environmental variables. So now we're going to configure the database connection, and in your env file, or create env.local if you have one for local development, set the database URL to use SQLite specifically. So it's going to use other database by default, but we're going to go to our .env, just simply delete the whole thing and paste this line of code, which is going to specify that we're going to use SQLite. And basically this tells Prisma to use as a SQLite database stored in the dev.db file at the root of your project. And now we're going to define data models for conversation and message to store user interactions. So what we're going to do now is we're going to update the whole schema of Prisma. So open up your Prisma directory, which we can find here, and open this file. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to give a lot of configuration and like different structure. So simply copy the code from our lesson again and paste it here, and I'm gonna walk you through it. So basically those values mean that so data source configuration specifies the use of SQLite and the database URL from the environmental variable. It's on the top here. And generator configuration, the second one, is instructs Prisma to generate the Prisma client JavaScript library. And after that we have the conversation model, which has different variables. So the first one is ID, which is a unique identifier, and the second one is user ID, so the ID of the user from Clerk, so they kind of interact between each other. The third one is the title, and it is optional title for the conversation, as like, you know, in the ChatGPT when you save a conversation it has like a title, so we can optional specify that. Also, we have created add and updated add. Basically, the timestamps for record keeping, they're not that important. And also, we have the message, which is relation to the message model and is deleted, soft delete flag, and indexes on user ID for efficient queries right here. And after that, we have another model which is called message. It also has a bunch of variables. So the first one is ID. Basically, it's a unique identifier for auto-incremented integer. After that, we have conversation ID, which is foreign key linking to a conversation. Then we have user ID, content of the message, role of the message, which is like role of the sender. It's either user or assistant. Also, we have the status, status of the message, which is defaulted to send. Also, we have created add and updated add for timestamps, is deleted for soft delete flag, and relation to conversation model. So they also interact between each other, and we have indexes on user ID and conversation ID. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually generate our Prisma client by running the following command in the terminal. So npx Prisma generate, which is gonna generate the whole thing. And basically what it does, once again, it generates the Prisma client based on your schema that we defined right here, allowing you to interact with your database in a type-safe manner. So let's run the command, and as you can see, generated Prisma client, and we can now start interacting with our database. So what we're gonna do now is we're actually gonna push, since we're using SQLite, we can use npx Prisma database push. This command basically syncs your Prisma schema with the SQLite database without creating migration files. So run npx Prisma db push, and as you can see, your database is now in sync with your Prisma schema, and it generated the Prisma client. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna implement our API routes. So we already have one defined here, but since we're using a bunch of databases and ORMs, we would have to refactor our API routes for better organization. Create a new folder within API folder, which we're gonna call messages, and within that folder create a new file and name it route.ts, obviously, and just paste the code from our lesson. So basically what it does, okay, we have an error here, but it's temporary. We're gonna create a library and define a prisma.ts route there, so just follow along. So we export next request on the top and next response. Also, we import Prisma from library Prisma, which we're going to define later, and we also import authentication from our Clerk. Then we define a new interface for message request, which defines the expected shape of the request body. And after that, we have the post handler right here, which is responsible for authentication. It retrieves user ID from the session and returns 401 for unauthorized if not authenticated. Also, we have request validation, checks for content. We have try catch blocks, so checks for content and role in the request body. Also, we have conversation handling right here. So if conversation ID is not provided, it creates a new conversation, and if conversation ID is provided, it fetches the conversation and verifies the ownership. That's how we basically create a conversation history. And after that, we have the message creation. So it creates a new message associated with the conversation and updates the update add field to reflect recent activity. So remember where we defined it in our schema. And in the end, it returns the created message and conversation ID. Also, it has the get handler right here, which is similar to post handler. And basically what it does, if conversation ID is provided in query parameters, it fetches a single conversation with messages, and if not, it's going to fetch all conversations for the user, including messages. And in the end, we return the conversations data. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly let you copy the code if you didn't do it from the lesson. So I'm just going to scroll through. Okay, and after we finish that, we're going to create a new folder within our API. So within our API folder, create a new one and call it stream. And within that folder, create a new route, TS, and paste it here. And basically what it does, it enables the edge runtime on the top for low latency streaming. And that's the reason why we deleted the initial route.ts file when we had just one. It's because Prisma cannot run with edge runtime functions in together, so that's why we have to create two separate files for both streaming and actually handling the OpenAI stuff and Prisma stuff. So yeah, it also has the post handler, which for request validation, it checks for prompt in the request body and creates an array with the user's message to send to OpenAI. Also sends a post request to OpenAI's API with stream equals to true to enable streaming responses, and also processes the streaming response from OpenAI using transform stream right here, and parses the forward valid JSON data chunks to the client to actually enable the streaming, and returns the streaming response to the client with appropriate headers. So to differentiate those two files, we can just simply think of this as streaming and OpenAI, and the messages is for handling Prisma and interacting with our schema. So yeah, now we're gonna update our frontend to manage multiple conversations, display messages in the chat interface, handle streaming responses, and save the conversation to interact with our databases, but on the front end. So I'm just gonna copy it from our lesson. Okay, and now we go here, we simply delete the code that we had in our previous lesson and we paste the new one. So basically what it does, it on the top, if you go here, it imports several stuff from Clerk, React, and Lucid React, so icons, and also a new component that we're also going to define later, which is a message display, so which displays the message. Here we have the interface for message, defines the shape of a message, and we also have interface for our conversation, which defines the shape of a conversation, including messages. Also, we have some state variables, so prompt of the user's input text, response loading, which indicates if a request is in progress, error, so right here, right here, which stores any error messages. Also, we have current conversation ID and set current conversation ID, which is the ID of the currently selected conversation. Also, we have conversations, which is basically a list of all conversations for the user, and current messages, which are messages in the current conversation. Also, we have some use effects, so fetches conversations on mount. It retrieves all the conversations for the user, and updates the messages when conversation changes. And yeah, it updates current messages when current conversation ID changes. And also we have some event handlers. So the first one, and probably the most important, is handle submit, which handles form submissions, saves the user's message, starts the assistant response, and updates UI in real time as data is streamed, so we can actually see the streaming process. And also we have the select conversation, which changes the current conversation and start new conversation, which resets the state to start a new conversation. Also we have rendering, so we have a header which displays the app title and user avatar if sent in. So you probably already noticed that from our previous lesson. We also added a sidebar to improve our UI, so it displays conversations like in the ChatGPT interface. Also, it has main content, so messages area displays messages using message display component, which we're going to define right now. Also, it has input area, so text area for user input, and submit button, and also signed out view for which prompts the user to sign in basically. And you can see that in our return JSX structure. And yeah, okay, now I'm gonna quickly scroll through so you can follow along. So yeah, so feel free to pause or just you can find the reference on the lesson right away and just copy the code and study it on your own. Okay, now we're gonna create a message display component, which basically is component for displaying the message. So within the root of our application, create a new folder and remove the caps lock and call it components. And within that folder, create a new component and message and name it message display.tsx. So we're gonna give it an interface and call it message props, which basically handles the message properties, and it will have a message with some values of content, which is a string. String and a role, which will be either assistant or user. So it's also going to be a string. And yeah, and now we're gonna copy the code from our lesson to actually export the component. So paste it here, and basically what it does, it gives a property, so expects a message object with content and role, and also it aligns message to the left or right based on the sender, and styles the message differently for the user and assistant. And it uses some Tailwind CSS for consistent and modern styling. As you can see here, it has some background, secondary and primary background, and some other styling. So yeah, that's basically it for the front end, and now we just have to create our lib prisma.ts. So within the root of your project, again, create a new folder and name it lib, and within that folder create a new file and name it prisma.ts. And basically what we're going to do here is going to import Prisma client from Prisma client, and we're going to declare global and define a variable Prisma client. It can be undefined. And yeah, I'm just gonna write the code and explain it in a second, because it's kind of hard to write and explain at the same time. So global Prisma client and if so global Prisma will equal to Prisma, and we're gonna export our Prisma in the end. So yeah, okay. I'm sorry for that. It's just hard to explain and write code at the same time, and it would take a lot of time. So that's why we usually paste the code from our lesson. And so yeah, this thing ensures that only one instance of Prisma client exists during development, and also it prevents issues with hot reloading in Next.js. And finally, we can now test our application. So let's make sure we don't have any mistakes. Oops. Okay, message display. And yeah, now it should work. Okay, we're gonna run our code now. So npm run dev. And now we're gonna test our functionality finally. So it's gonna start the server and navigate to localhost. And it should load right now. Yeah, as you can see, we already logged in because we played with authentication in the last lesson. So as you can see, we have a button to create a new chat and improved user interface. So if you're gonna type a message, hello, how are you? As you can see, the streaming works, and it also saves all our chat in this sidebar, so we can create a new chat and ask it the same question, how many stars are in the universe? And yeah, so as you can see, all our conversations are saved, and if we reload the website, it's still gonna save all of them. And now we can try to log out from our account and use another one. So okay, this one for instance, and it will have new history. So yeah, we can just say hello, and it's gonna store it. So everything works perfectly, and now we have a fully functional AI assistant with a conversation history, with our database using SQLite. And yeah, great job today, guys. So what we have achieved today is we integrated Prisma and SQLite into our Next.js application. We defined robust data models for conversations and messages. We implemented API routes following modern best practices. We improved the frontend to manage multiple conversations and make our user interface way cleaner. And we used some libraries for that, such as Lucid React. And we also provided a seamless chat experience with real-time streaming responses. So yeah, and as of next steps, you can try to implement additional features such as add message deletion and conversation archiving. You can implement search functionality within conversation, and also enhance the user interface or user experience with animations and better styling. And also you can add rate limiting to API routes to prevent abuse, and maybe implement input validation and sanitization. And also you could optimize database queries and just play with Prisma, ORM, and SQLite, or even explore other databases. So yeah, thank you for your participation and hard work today. Happy hacking, see you in the next lesson.